This is the bit when you start to regress it. And also, you know that bit on the news when they do now off to the local bit? And it all looks like it's filmed on a handy cam or something like that. That's the quality. The professionals will be back after this. Don't worry about it. So based on the title, as you can see, I totally misunderstood the prompt about being about the future because I was got that thing stuck in my head about the movie and time travel and things like that. So I thought I'd talk about something. It's got a lot of history. You know, Marconi wasn't kicking around yesterday when he came up with his brilliant invention. And I think it still has a bit of a future. And actually, it's kind of funny. People think of radio as old-fashioned. You think, you know, we've got the internet, we've got all this video, we've got all this streaming stuff going on. But actually, 9 out of 10 of you in here and on the internet there as well, listen to radio every day, every week. 90% of you are still doing it. The breakdown between digital and analog, that's changed a bit over time. It used to be very sort of analog and a few weirdos streamed it on the internet. Nowadays, it's going very much the other way. It's very digital. You get it through your television, you get it on the internet, you get it through digital radio itself, which actually is a bit old-fashioned. It's all MP2 and a bit ancient, but we don't talk about that. Broadcasters scale from literally a computer in somebody's bedroom. So you go pay your music license and you're now a broadcaster. Everything's amazing. Up to, you know, multinational stuff, BBC type scale. You can go as big or as small as you like. And with you lot, myself being a bit of a technology type person, I thought we'd talk about the technology side of radio rather than programming. But, you know, we'll get to questions and we'll have to answer the odd one, like, you know, why is it the same 4 songs you hear over and over? They actually prompt us on day one when you go into industry to answer that one. Yeah, or what's that Queen is Dead alarms about? But I think the name's King gives it away in there. So if we're going to time travel, we need a machine to time travel in, and the DeLorean is already taken. With us being thinking about the future, we've got to be thinking about being green. We don't want to leave it a horrible mess in the future. Clean, electric. So we're looking for a vehicle that's futuristic, yet fits in the past as well, because we're going to go back in time. We've got something that's got to fit in. So nice electric vehicle. We're going to have a time traveling milk float. That's how we're going to get about. But it's clearly been taken. No, I'm actually sober. That's the worrying bit. So we're going to travel back and forth in time. We need a couple of references to work from. So we've got to start with a dated one for our traveling back in time. We're going to go for Smashing Nicey. You older ones in the audience together, a lot of younger ones going, what's that about? Old-fashioned radio, all a bit cheesy. You can pretend, we know you know what it is. So we need something to refer to the now. So we're going to go for, okay, who's been messing with the slides? The more worrying bit is you managed to find that. I thought that disappeared off the internet. So we'll go for a bit of Alan Partridge. He's still kicking around somehow. And the worrying bit is if I watch Alan Partridge on the telly, it's more cringe than anything because I know people exactly like that. And it's that whole horrible, yeah. But he's our reference for the now. And I've told, I'm not allowed to be too pessimistic because it's all about the future. So it's all, oh, it's going to work. It's not working. Clean, shiny robot lady, which clearly doesn't work because the future. So travel back in time and see what radio was like technology-wise a few years ago. The worrying thing about that photo is it's a stock photo I found on the internet, but it's a studio I actually worked at years ago. Recognize all the equipment. Anyway, in the past, so you talk about radio, you think it's all high tech and things like that. Actually, no, it's not. That big old analog mixer on the left-hand side, that used to come with a big thick manual, about 4 inches thick, full of wiring diagrams and the parts to get from RS if you needed to fix it and anything like that. So lots of trips to Maplins at silly hours of the day to get parts to keep things on air. Can't do that anymore because Maplins doesn't exist. But, you know, he had a few bigger broadcasters. Everything was analog. There was a bit of computer technology coming in. So the things you might notice there's big old CRT monitors. But if you look down in his hands, he's got a CD, which is a bit old-fashioned nowadays. But the other one to notice is he's got a sheet of paper. And what that is that's his instructions for play this song, play this advert, play this song. It's as long as it's called. That was one of the first bits of computer technology that came into broadcast. And if you think it's really clever, the algorithms that pick songs on the radio, it's not. Just imagine you've got 2, 3, 4 piles of CDs. pick the next one off the top. So long as you haven't played that artist too recently, that's the next one you play, stick it on the bottom. That is how, even nowadays, scheduled work, it's not high-tech stuff. So we did get bits of computer technology coming in, but it's all very old-fashioned. In fact, probably the most high-tech thing there is in the top right-hand corner behind that microphone. That is an audio editor. So it's a briefcase size, has a little hard drive in it, and that's how they cut all your swear words out when you were cursing at the DJ in the morning to make it sound like you actually enjoyed listening to them. So that's what that bit of kit there does. Whoops, flipped again. So that was the studio side. Transmission side, it was all big electronic pieces of equipment, very low tech, usually windy hilltops or boggy marshes. Yes, you know, it's always out in the wilderness. If you wanted to get your audio out into the wilderness, it's quite expensive. You either need microwave radio or you need to buy dedicated phone lines and have them hooked up all the time. I'm sure you've been told off by your mum for staying on the phone for too long. Now imagine doing it 24/7, 365. It's a very expensive phone bill. In terms of, you know, data and technology side of things, we had this thing called RDS, which you've probably never heard of before, but I'm sure it has annoyed you at some point. You ever been driving down the road listening to your CD or your MP3 or whatever, and suddenly it breaks in with a traffic bulletin? That's RDS's fault. It's a little flag of control at the transmitter. So, you know, that was the height of technology at that point. That's what it looked like in the past. And we wasted a lot of bandwidth. So your standard FM radio station, it's 150 kilohertz of dedicated spectrum. It's a big old chunk of spectrum just to listen to that annoying breakfast DJ. Maybe not the best balance. So let's head into the present, where you're going to see far more computers and far more technology. We'll do our little time traveling thing. I wish we had more whoosh effects or something like that. There we go. So every time it travels, if you can make that noise, that would make my job better. So nowadays we're seeing a lot more broadcasters. So charity, yeah, we've still got the old things like hospital radio, student radio, things like that. Community radio, we've got a few around here, so Baza and Erewash Sound and things like that. Very small scale licenses that allow hyper-local broadcasters to operate. And of course, online radio has exploded over time as well. Open standards are a big thing. How many of you have heard of the EBU before? European Broadcasting Union? Because of Eurovision, I bet. That's not the only thing you do. Everyone assumes Eurovision, but actually they take technical standards as well. So BWF is broadcast wave format. It's a standard audio format to share bits of information as well as the audio itself. Audio over IP. So you ever seen that green cabinet down at the bottom of the street? And you ever seen it split open? It's just full of wires and there's lots of little blocks and it's all connected. And you wonder, how do they ever figure that out? Now imagine a whole wall of that and you've got an old-fashioned radio station. That's how we used to wire the things. Nowadays, we can do it with multicast audio over IP. It's all computerized, even the link between transmitters like that. And cart jump's just a file standard as well. So playout software. So computers are now playing all the audio on the radio. That's brilliant. It used to be, you know, if you want to go and buy an expensive, you know, proprietary system, it could be $5 grand a workstation is what you're looking at. So if you want it to be as, you know, a small scale broadcasters, charity, community, things like that, that's a bit more than you've got in your pocket. It's only more than I've got in my pocket. So there are free and open source alternatives. One of the biggest ones is on that top right there. It looks a bit old fashioned. That's because it was originally written about 15, 20 years ago now, but it's very solid. A lot of broadcasters, a few broadcasters in the UK even using it. I think even the charity station down the road here at the hospital is using it, if I'm remembering correctly. So it has got a bit of presence. It's called Rivendell, and I think it's named after Lord of the Rings or something like that. See, I'm not familiar with all the geek mythology, unfortunately. One of the sad things Rivendell lacks is you can't record voice. So the bits of voice that you have between the songs, it'd be nice if you could record them and just upload them. Rivendell unfortunately requires you to sit in front of the computer, record it. It's a bit fiddly in Linux land, but if it's that versus spending 5k, you're going to do it. Audio editors, you know, it's 60 quid a month if you want to get your Adobe package thing, or you can get a free and open source one on the right there. Does the job just the same, but I'm trying to remember what it's called. Audacity, they've just had a fork. So we're seeing what that mess looks like and settle down before we see which version we go with. But you know, it's been a real trooper over the years it's been released. And at the transmitter side, so, okay, admittedly that picture on the right's a bit analog, and that's actually the top of the co-op in Ilkeston that was taken. And what you don't see, you might see a lot of dust on that side. What you don't see behind that picture is like the inch thick pile of bird poo that was just everywhere. It is not being cleaned up in a very long time. Nasty place. But that's effectively the worst sound you're looking at there. But in terms of, you know, out and about and getting things connected between studios and transmitters and things like that, OpenSIPs and Asterisk, you might even have heard of these bits of software. They are used for telephone systems. And actually, what if I told you that one place I worked, we set up an OpenSIPs system, and we got a mobile app and stuck it on the phones of well-known politicians. I won't mention which because we're recording. If you want to know, you have to apply that out to me later. And suddenly you've got the ability to do high-quality voice connections and interviews and things like that just by dialing their number. We go, there we go, you're now speaking to very important politicians. OpenOB is another one that's sort of popped up. So this was written by a guy who's now got a gig at the BBC off the back of it. So one of the things you don't think about is, imagine you're going to use the internet to stream your audio, which is great, that's fine, it'll work. And if you've got buffers, you can account for jitter and all that, that's brilliant. But if clocks are drifting, so, you know, the clock's running faster on one side and slower on the other, it's not going to quite work. You're either going to overfill the buffer and drop audio, or you're going to underfill the buffer and you're going to stutter, and it's going to sound horrible. So OpenOB sort of brought the clocking technology in, and, you know, it's available free of charge. And suddenly, you know, that connection we're talking about, you know, needs to nail up that phone line 24/7, 365. Well, we could just use the public internet now. It's cheap, you know, 30 quid a month. It's brilliant. And WebRTC, I don't know if anyone's come across this one. It's one of the open things that's appeared in Google Chrome fairly recently. And one of the most prominent places you've probably not heard it but not realized it's there would be Radio 5 Live. So if you've heard any interviews they do in the morning, 9 times out of 10 it's just somebody firing up Chrome, plugging a microphone in, and that's you connected. And it sounds far more better than doing it over a phone line. So that's the way technology is going. You know, we're really taking advantage of it. We can even do interviews on these things, and they sound brilliant. You know, that's the way technology is going. They have been taking advantage of it. So we've also been doing stuff on the web and the digital side. So Icecast is pretty much the streaming platform of choice. You know, even things like Classic FM use Icecast.
Nikhil,
it's a job very reliably.
Nearly 10 past 8.
Open source mobile apps and Alexa
You
skills.
go up for a shower.
It's really changing the industry.
You want any Movicol?
It's connected to this bit of kit. I don't know if you'll see it down the camera there. TAC RF.
Tropical Movicol. And have you had your thing?
So it's an SDR, software defined radio.
Yeah.
So all it does is it takes a bit of data in the side of it and generates a radio signal out the other side. Sounds pretty simple, but combine it with this open source bit of software, MMB tools, which lets you combine audio streams together, build something called a transport stream, and then shove it out the back of this. You've got a DAB multiplex. So suddenly you can broadcast 20, 30 stations with a bit of open source hardware and a bit of open source software. And the way that's changing the industry right now is Ofcom's actually licensing small scale multiplexes. Think about the scale of Nottingham City or Derby or something like that, where for a couple £100 a month, any broadcaster can come along and join the service and start broadcasting whatever you like. So especially you've got you know, small pockets of ethnic communities and things like that, it works brilliantly. Because suddenly, okay, it's not that expensive to become broadcaster, and you've got an audience out there you can get to. All they've got to have is a digital radio, nice and simple. Well, I travel into the future and see where we think things are going. Yeah, thank you. Much appreciated. So one of the interesting ones the BBC did actually was something called object media. So if you're a developer, you'll have heard of object-oriented programming, won't you? Take that concept of thinking of things as objects and apply it to media. So there's somebody speaking, that's an object. There's a song, that's an object. There's a jingle, that's an object. There's a piece of video, that's an object. That's a good starting point. So you can break it down into those individual components, and now combine that with something like a suggestion engine that knows, like Spotify does, oh, you like that song, or you like this piece of content, you like, and suddenly you've got this ability to give very individualized content So that, you know, that's the sort of clever stuff I think we'll start to see. I think we'll see a scale down of the data feedback into programming. So at the moment, big broadcasters can collect all this data that's coming from streaming and whatnot and shove it back into the other side and go, right, okay, we could do your individual songs and tracks and things like that. I don't know if you come across this where you listen to a radio station on the mobile app and they let you skip songs. That's become a thing nowadays. But you also use the same technology to give you individual adverts. You tend not to notice that bit, but that's part of the technology as well. So I think we'll see a bit of that. Cloud playout, that's an interesting concept. You know, do you actually need a radio studio if you can record all your bits of audio on a mobile phone? The one thing that says cloud probably isn't the right place for it would be the fact you need compute 24/7, 365. That becomes very expensive in the cloud, even for small scale. So I think that's a sticky point there, but there's no reason, if you can make the numbers work, you couldn't use that as a technology. And I think one of the things we've been sorely lacking is an open source scheduler. All the music schedulers and all the programming schedulers that you see nowadays, you're talking a couple £100 a month to pay for them. They are very, very expensive bits of software. They're doing a very simple job, but it's a very niche market, so it's sort of understandable. Now, if you look at all this and go, oh, like the shiny technology, oh, I want to be on the radio or something like that, something to bear in mind, you can get involved yourself. So if you decide, I want to be a radio star, you know, all these small scale stations are looking for presenters. They're also looking for people on the technology side or getting involved in any of that kind of stuff. A bit of shameless plug time. You know, there's my own open source projects kicking around on GitHub you can take advantage of. And if you just want freebies, I have car stickers for the online station I do bits for as well. My missus will be glad if I get rid of these. So we'll be good. Any questions? Or have I stunned you all into silence? Yeah, sure.
So it's like, you know, radio tour, so those voice parts that they do,
Yeah.
aren't live, they
Not necessarily.
and stick them in.
On some shows, yes. You wouldn't necessarily know which ones either.
They're even regionally aware of it, like depending on the region, you get served something that's relevant to that region.
Yep. So one of the things I didn't point out is that the commercial side, we actually split by transmitter. So the likes of Trent FM, which is who I used to work for, they've got a Mansfield transmitter and a Nottingham transmitter, and they get different ads. So there's just sort of starting point as to how small scale they can go with these things. They can even do individual links on those transmitters as well. So, you know, they've got flooding or a problem in Mansfield, they could play a link out there, and Nottingham doesn't need to know about it. That's technology that's been there for 20, 30 years.
Given the nostalgia of things like vinyl coming back, do you think FM will be canned?
I don't see FM being canned anytime soon. I think AM's on the in its death throes, unfortunately, but FM's got a fair bit of life in it. You know, it's if you're looking at comparing it to digital radio, just the sheer amount of battery power required to make a digital radio work, compared to actually you buy a couple of AA's, your FM radio works for months. You know, I think until we sort that problem out, you know, it's definitely going to lean towards FM or sticking around. And they're still licensing FM stations, so I'd be surprised if we're going to kill it off. Trying to get
like you have to type, so if any of it opens like.
So ham radio sits in its own bit of spectrum, so it's got its own frequencies and things that are set aside. Broadcasters have their own set of spectrum. BBC kind of just do whatever they feel like because they were there first and that's their thing. Everyone else basically has to bid for licenses as they come up. There is a slight workaround on that in that community stations are just available to bid at certain intervals. And for commercial licenses, they're supposed to be available every 10 years, but as long as you have a digital radio station on DAB, you get an automatic renewal, which means nobody can compete for your license. So the only way really into it at the moment is to go and buy something that already exists. But ham radio, yeah, go nuts.
Yeah, no, I was just, I know that's part of the spectrum and you use,
Yes.
but that doesn't intersect with the FM part.
No. They might use the same encoding or, you know, but it's very different parts of spectrum.
Because I know you can buy those like little like FM radio things that plug into aux cables, but that's like definitely illegal. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, technically. The other thing that's illegal that most people don't realise, you know, those people that sit at the end of the runway with their scanners listening to the control tower. That's technically illegal under something called the Wireless Telegraphy Act. It's wonderfully old-fashioned, but basically, if you listen to something that you're not supposed to, transmission's also covered by that. So yes, technically they're illegal, but I think they've made a caveat for under a certain power. Yeah, that's fairly recent.
How high can transmission go? Upwards, never transmit.
We try not to make them go up because it's just wasting electricity. We're bugging. But you know, it's that infinite can go, you know, until you get to the point where you just can't listen to it. But in terms of power, you know, hundreds of kilowatts is not unknown, and that's coming out the antenna, which is why sometimes feeder cables and things catch fire because there's just a huge amount of energy, and if you've got a mismatch in there, it's got to go somewhere. Yeah.
If FM was open to pirate radio, local broadcasts, do you think open source software in radio is likely to lead to people hijacking radio in different ways now?
Already kind of happens. So one of the ones that pirates are very aware of is something called an RBR, rebroadcast link. So imagine you've got just a little radio tuner that's listening to the main transmitter over there and just relays it out. Well, if you turn up with your 25 watt special and overpower it, you've now got a 2 kilowatt beast that you can take. Yeah, the way FM works, effectively whoever's got the most power wins. And the pirates are very aware of it. And if you go down to London, it's just the spectrum's full of pirates.
But almost if you're using digital streaming now, then there's an IP risk as well.
Yeah, there's a security risk. One of them, this genuinely happened. So there's little IP codecs that Barracks used to sell years ago. And a bunch of radio stations in the US just plugged them into the internet. They didn't put sitting behind a firewall or anything like that. Didn't even change the default password. You can probably guess where this is going. I believe it was some random furry internet station got relayed onto them en masse. So, you know, it has happened. It's not a surprise it happens. And it's the whole thing of, you know, cybersecurity do need to get on top of it. Yes. But if you've got broadcasters ranging from, you know, it's a couple of friends having a shot at it because, you know, they're trying to hit a target community, they're not going to have that knowledge and experience behind them. So it's a known issue, unfortunately. No great solution.
Can we just test any questions on the chat? Paul?
Yeah, sure.
Put your text in, or I can unmute you, but we won't hear you right now.
I need to unmute them or?
No, it could be here. Anyone wants to ask a question online?
Any questions on the internet? Have you all gone home?
Train, I think.
Do you have any problems with like harmonics? Because sometimes, you know, if you pick a radio station, you move across, it's still.
Yes, we do sometimes have little problems with things like that. So Ofcom actually took advantage of that to restrict the service areas of community radio stations when they first launched. So they won't give you a completely clear, they give it what's a clear channel in your area, but to keep you hemmed in, just outside your area would be people that were very, you know, very close in terms of harmonics and things like that. And you were restricted by interference, I think was the term that used. We thought you just turning the wick up and.
So you don't have a maximum wattage.
So for community, it would have just been 25 watts at the time. They've loosened the rules up. It's a couple hundred watts now. But something like a commercial broadcaster, a couple of kilowatts. So I think Leicester Sound, which is what the antenna picture there was, about 2.6, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Cool. Happy days.
Thanks very much.